Hello there everybody, I'm Sabar Knight 2AK Nightmare, and welcome back to Chaos Head. In the last episode, we got ourselves a somewhat better explanation of how the D-swords work? Well, at least now I have a better understanding of how you gain a D-sword. You gotta be fucking mentally broken. I guess is probably the best way to summarize that. Pretty messed up because we kind of got a glimpse of how Kozupi mentally broke. Senna also has a D-sword. How did she break? I'm kind of wondering, I'm pretty sure we might get this question answered if we go a little bit further, but now I'm just like super curious. However, granted, aside from the comments that we got from Britton and Emiya, by the way, thank both of you, by the way, the comment by Time Axis really stood out to me. The idea of mutual recognition breaks down when you realize that another person recognizing something is still only being confirmed through your own senses, and thus could also be a deception. The end result of this line of thinking is a concept in philosophy called solipsism. I think, therefore I am, being the ultimate limit of all human knowledge about the universe. The only way around this problem is to say, if we believe that, then we won't get anywhere about anything. So let's just pretend that's not a thing and move on. Thank you very much for that sort of comment there, Time Axis. That's what's really got me into, like, that. That's part of the reason why I found it to be very fascinating. Just the idea of mutual recognition. I kind of want to go back and rewatch that theme, you know? Or rewatch that scene. And just listen to Senna kind of explain this in her way. It's interesting. It's interesting. Anyway, let's continue where we left off, shall we? According to the minimum attendance chart, I didn't have to go to school today. But despite that, I was heading there anyway for one reason and one reason only. To see Remy. I had no doubt that the DQNs in class would make fun of me, just like they always did. It would definitely suck, but if it meant I could see Remy, I could endure it. As I passed through the school gate, I thought back to yesterday. When we'd parted, Senna had made it a point to say something.
お前が望むと望まないとに関わらず、もしこれ以上踏み込んでくるようなら、負を正にするぐらいの強い意識を持つんだな。
Your consciousness must be strong enough to create positive from negative.
中途半端な気持ちじゃ、妄想に食われるだけだぞ。
Ooh. Positive to negative. That feels like it's also kind of referencing the delusion system of this game with the green and the red. Like, if I take this advice at face value, it's implying like, if you don't balance the green with the red, then there's a chance that, well, something bad will happen. And I'm not trying to assign green and red to positive and negative. I'm now just kind of like taking it like that, like it's like you got to balance it out or turn. I don't know. It might be a bit. I might be pulling. I don't know. I might be just making ants out of a molehill. I don't know. I didn't want to get involved in anything that sounded dangerous, so I'd opted not to ask anything else. Besides, I still didn't know how far I'd have to go to get my hands on a D-sword. I was no hero. Just a useless piece of shit that couldn't even protect his own sister. But it was also possible that Shogun could show up again. He seemed to be playing with me like it was some kind of game after all. Maybe he'd feel like sending me on another quest soon. Just the thought alone terrified me. I tried to grasp my D-sword, but even that was just to protect myself from him. Without that sword, how could I ever hope to escape his evil clutches? Maybe if Remy was by my side, like she said she would be. But she'd been absent from school lately, which worried me. What if she'd been taken hostage? Just like Nanami. Was there anyone out there who could help me? There would have to be someone with the D sword. Ayase couldn't because she was injured. Senna definitely wouldn't. And Kozupi was a bit... No, she was fairly weird. My head looking squarely at the floor, I entered the classroom. Before taking my seat, I took a quick look around. I looked toward Rimi's seat first. Empty. Was she taking today off too? Was it really that simple? Was she really just taking time off? I began to feel anxious. I wanted to see her. I wanted to see that cheerful face. Next, I looked over at Kozupi's desk. She was in her seat, face down and huddled up. I was reminded of what Senna had told me yesterday. It now made sense why Kozupi was always like that. Hello. Morning, Kozupi. I didn't make eye contact, but I greeted her with my inner voice. The female DQNs were watching me, smirking. Wow. I don't feel comfortable saying that word. It was no different than yesterday. They'd already labeled me as that otaku freak who said he was psychic and made an ass of himself on TV. And that label wasn't going away anytime soon. The male DQNs didn't seem to have arrived yet. It was pretty common for them to skip first period, and that was fine by me. I took my seat. But when I did, that voice called my name.
Taku, ohayo.
Rimi? Holy shit! Shocked, I looked up in a panic, and there she stood, right in front of my very eyes. Rimi. With a hint of shyness, she gave me a short wave.
久しぶり.
Where the hell were you?
Rimi.
It wasn't an illusion. There was a definite presence. She was breathing. Her hair was rustling. She was blinking. She was right there. She was right here. I felt a twinge in the back of my nose. A tightness squeezed within my chest. I felt like I was going to cry. I still hadn't sat down. I just frozen with my head hanging down. I was so happy. I'd gotten to see her again.
ちょっとタク、どうしたの?
I have been pulling my hair out, losing my fucking mind for the past few days. Where have you been?
もしかして泣いてるの?
I frantically shook my head. If my DQN classmates found I was crying, they'd start making fun of me all over again. I told myself that I couldn't cry, but the tears kept flowing.
わかった。私に再会できて嬉しいんだ。そうでしょ。なんてね。ちょっと自意識過剰だったかな。
You have no heckin' idea. Even as she joked around so cheerfully, all I could do was continue shaking my head. I couldn't even look at her. If I did, I knew I'd really start bawling. Suddenly, someone clapped me on the back.
Oh, Taku.
Oh, you finally talking to me now? It was Masumi-kun, with an uncomfortable look on his face. His slap was a lot weaker than usual. You certainly had no issue ignoring me before. Why start paying attention to me now, all of a sudden? I'm sure that you'll regret talking to me. You'll become the DQN's next target, just like me. Yeah, Rimi, Masumi-kun, even you. You'd both be better off not associating with an otaku freak like me. I remained silent, but Misumi-kun forced a smile.
暗いな。朝から新規臭いぜ。ま、お前はそういうやつだって分かってるけどな。
As harsh as his words were, I didn't get the feeling that he was joking or acting sarcastic. After all, it was pretty common for him to say stuff like that.
そういう大臣は朝から無駄に爽やかだね。
無駄にとか言うな。久々に学校来たと思ったらいきなりそれか。
To be fair, you weren't at Takumi's side until she suddenly showed up, so you really don't have any room to talk.
じゃあ嘘くさい爽やかさ。
なたく、この言い草どう思うよ。
I nodded ambiguously. The tears had somehow managed to stop. The usual routine was happening right in front of me. Both of them were completely oblivious to the fact that my standing in class had taken a steep nosedive.
そういえば、岸本のことを聞いたか。
Kishimoto?
まだ入院中らしいぜ。怪我は大したことなかったんだけど、精神的にかなり参ってるらしい。
But is she okay though?
いいか、タク。女を落とすのに一番手っ取り早いのは、弱ってる時に優しくしてやることだ。
Joke's on you. I didn't have to act. I was just being myself. And I got the girl. So I don't need your advice.
というわけで俺、本気で岸本の見舞いに行こうかなと思ってんだよね。
Oh my lord, Misumi-kun.
大臣最低。ブーブー。
Facts. Absolute facts. You are the worst.
今度こそ彼女さんに刺されるよ。
I mean, to be fair, he'd kinda deserve it.
お見舞いに行くだけだろ。別にやましいことじゃねえよ。
Nothing's gonna happen that I'm gonna feel guilty about.
ほんの数秒前と言ってることが違うし。
My god. You are just a sleazeball. You know that?
そういえばタクって岸本と知り合いだったよな。な、一緒に行ってくんね。
Wait. You want Takumi to come with you? Why not all three of us? Actually, wait, can we invite Kozupi too? It was the typical subject matter for Misumi-kun. I thought for sure he was going to ask me about my psychic powers, but when he didn't, it caught me completely off guard. But instead of noticing, Misumi-kun went right back to what he was saying. Then we fell into our usual routine. Misumi-kun talking and talking, Remake occasionally butting in with a sharp jab, and me just giving vague responses. And the fact that it was no different than usual, it made me happy. See, now this is actually quite nice, you know? It's interesting because, like, in the beginning, all he did was complain about a large amount of these things, but after all of the hell that he has gone through, he wants nothing more than to have that level of normalcy back. It's almost... It is kind of sad. Oh, sad. And then the guy whose artwork makes him look as sleazy as possible. Oh boy. At the top floor of Nozomi Group HQ, within the presidential office, Norose Genichi stood near a window, lighting a cigarette ablaze. And now we have a name, Norose Genichi. Nozomi Group. An enormous corporate group with abundant subsidiaries. One that conducted business while being accompanied by licensed approval from the nation itself. A number of those subsidiaries then found success in a variety of business fields. from sales of clothing or groceries to managing sales and imports as a trading company. Norase, who reigned above all as the apex of the group, looked below at the grand view of his castle. His conscious mind, however, was not gazing upon the scenery before him. Repeatedly tapping his foot against the floor in agitation, his lips curled in a sneer.
まったく。老人たちの相手は面倒ですよ。
I had a feeling that you were probably just using those people.
そう思いませんか。彼らは臆病すぎる。だからこそここまでのし上がってきたとも言えるのでしょうが。
Now, who are you talking to?
利用するにもこうあれこれと横槍を入れられてはいい加減うんざりしてきますよ。現実は悲しいかな。300人委員会の影響力というものを侮ることはできません。ただいずれ近いうちにそのシステムも崩壊する。世界の支配構造は組み替えられる。
It's always about some shady shady shadow organization just wanting to take over the world.
楽しみですか？私もですよ。ここまで随分時間がかかってしまいました。プロジェクトノア立ち上げからすでに5年余り。
Project Noah. Norose approached his personal desk. The solid desk of natural oak contained few ornaments of any note, adorned only with items one might find in a typical office setting. At the table's edge, however, a single conspicuous object casually lay. Watch, it's gonna be a Seraton figure. Norose grasped the green, strangely designed character in his hand. Green? Upon giving it a single disinterested glance, he promptly discarded it in the waste bin.
さて
His narrowed eyes turned to the dim room's interior. The rear of the room, where the moonlight could not reach, housed the slightest hint of another person.
まさか君がギガロマニアックスだとは思いもよりませんでした。
Because of course he's aware of gigalomaniacs.
どうやら神すらも私の味方をしてくれているようだ。君のサンプルを取らせてもらいますよ。何？怯える必要はありません。私は元医師でしてね。インフォームドコンセントはきちんとしなければ気が済まないたちなのです。
A doctor?
そもそもノア2のハードウェアはすでに完成しています。あと必要なのはソフトウェアの方でしてね。そのために君たちギガロマニアックスのサンプルが多く必要なのです。
I'm gonna make a guess. Senna. There's my guess.
正確に言うならば NA シナプスに関するコードサンプル。脳の働きに指令を出す役割を果たしている部位の行動サンプルですよ。
Actually, there's only one other option. Yua, because we have not seen Yua in God knows how long. The last time we literally saw anything from Yua involved when the earthquake took place. And then the white fog of the sky hit.
コードサンプルには個人差があります。持っている能力が高いギガロマニアックスは NA シナプスもより活性化し、脳のより広い範囲にわたって効果を及ぼします。
Synapses are sites formed between neurons and other cells that receive and transmit neurotransmitters. Their shape resembles that of hands holding one another, but there is a gap of about 20 nanometers between each synapse. Neurotransmitters move between these gaps, and when doing so, appear almost as if they are floating.
人間の脳は全体の10分の1しか使われていません。しかしギガロマニアックスは違う。
Oh? Gigalomaniacs are able to use more than 10% of their brain?
残りの10分の9の部位も使っていることが分かっています。
Ah, okay. So Gigalomaniacs are able to use 100% of their brain power. Okay.
ギガロマニアックスの頭の中というのは実に興味深い。そのサンプルがノア2にとっていわば CPU の役割を果たすわけです。サンプルが多ければ多いほどノア2の能力は本物のギガロマニアックスに近づき、やがて超えるでしょう。
The abilities of Noah 2 will approach that of a true Gigalomaniac until eventually it surpasses them. This feels like he's talking about potentially a person, like he's handcrafting a Gigalomaniac to enact his will upon the world. That's what it's starting to sound like.
納得してもらえましたか？結構。
Damn, we don't even hear anything or any indicator of who it could have possibly been. Norose nodded in satisfaction, exhaling a cloud of smoke as he returned his view to the scenery beyond the window. Upon viewing it up close, the Shibuyan nightscape was the essence of vulgarity itself, leaving Norose solely with feelings of discomfort. His persistent belief of this remote location, however, was that it was more than adequate. Nevertheless, it would not be long before this nightscape would be a sight never to be seen again. The final experiment of his Project Noah would make sure of that.
世界が生まれ変わる日も近い。
Oh. Fuck, it really was. It is oh my god. It's either Yua or it's something even worse. There's only two people in my mind that have Giro Froggies. Yua and Nanami. And I don't know which one's worse. Obviously, I think it's Nanami at this point. It was lunch break. I usually skipped lunch. I had no one to eat with, and I didn't want to eat alone in the classroom. Recently, Rimi had started asking me to eat with her, but since I was me, I would always get embarrassed and refuse in the end. That meant that my usual routine would be to leave the classroom and take refuge in a place I felt comfortable. Sometimes it was the library, sometimes it was the courtyard. But now that everyone in the school knew my face, there was no place I could go where I could relax. The merciless gaze that pierced through me, the abuse and ridicule that was hurled at me. Today, too, I walked around the school being exposed to all of it. Eventually, I knew I had no choice but to duck into a private bathroom, but right when I was about to... Nanami! I saw Nanami walking down the corridor leading to the first-year building. It looked like she was walking alone toward the classrooms. Speaking of Nanami, I hadn't spoken to her since the incident. I've been avoiding her for the entire week. And I've been doing it because I didn't know how to act once I saw her. I had put my own life before hers. I was the worst big brother ever. It was only a miracle that Nanami had been released safe and sound. I'd had nothing to do with it. Maybe Shogun had told her that it was my fault she'd gotten kidnapped. If he had, she would definitely be angry with me. Maybe she hated me. Maybe she didn't want to speak to me ever again. That was why I didn't have the courage to go talk to her. But now that I'd seen her, I was starting to worry about her once again. Even after everything. I wondered if I had truly wronged her. I wondered if she'd been injured. I wonder if she'd been hurt mentally. For a moment, the memory of the hand resurfaced in my head. But I shook my head violently to ward it off. That severed hand, along with the bangle it had been wearing, and the cell phone it had been holding. It had all been a delusion. A real delusion. Because the hand had disappeared from the refrigerator, Rather than thinking it somehow sprouted legs and walked away, it was far more reasonable to believe that it had never been there in the first place. The fact that Nanami was alive and well was proof of that. Before I knew it, I had broken into a run. I was chasing after Nanami. Her figure got bigger and bigger as I approached her. She hadn't noticed me yet. As she walked, she played with her hair with the fingertips of her right hand. As I ran, I started to call out to her. On her right hand, the hand that was playing with her hair, the sleeve of her uniform ever so slightly slipped down. Suddenly, I was hit with a strange feeling, and I choked back the sound I was about to make. I stopped dead in my tracks. Oh shit, those are bandages. I'd seen it. It had been an extremely trivial, truly inconsequential feeling. And yet... White. It was white. As if trying to conceal something. A white bandage was wrapped around her right wrist. Finished Chapter 7. Chapter 8, IR2? Okay, so here's my thought process here. If she truly did lose her hand, I don't know the medical science behind this, but I have heard, or at least I think if the time is right and you're able to get it timed properly, if somebody loses a limb, you can get it surgically reattached and it actually works. I think. I feel like I'd have to research this, but I don't. Oh God, I do not need my FBI agent wondering why I'm looking up if it's possible to reattach limbs that have been severed. Ugh. Ugh. I don't need them looking that shit up. Anyway, initiated by Momose, a meeting was slated to be held at Frisia Credit Bureau, a meeting to which Bond was now running nearly half an hour late. Are you shocked? Momose's angry voice hurled into him as he entered the office. In response to this, Bond gave a minor shrug and proceeded to walk up to the desk of Frisia's president with an amiable smile on his face. He had not brought any refreshments today, something he was beginning to believe may have been a lapse in judgment.
あら、つばちゃんは？
今日は別行動。
Uh-huh.
若い子をこき使ってバンちゃんは楽してるわけね。
いやいや、俺もちゃんとやってるよ。昨日だって徹夜でいろいろ調べてたんだぜ。おかげで最近の女子高生の生態についてはかなり詳しくなった。
The culture surrounding high school girls? What?
あんたね、呆れて物も言えないわ。
で、こうして俺を呼びつけたってことは、あの子と連絡取れたってこと？
The kid?
今来てるわ。
さすがももちゃん。
Wait, Senna?
ちなみに可愛い子かい？
Bon? Thank you. Thank you very much, Momose. You are best girl. Momose promptly smacked Bon over the head, stopping his opportunistic grin in its tracks. The sheer speed with which she had turned her wrist made the slap especially fierce.
いつまでもバカなこと言ってんじゃないわよ、エロ親父。
God damn it, Momose is just becoming like one of my fucking favorite characters in this whole thing.
冗談だって。
I mean, I like Bond too, but goddamn, Momose's got that charm. I like her. Before arriving at the building, Bond had made a private request to Momose. It entailed setting up a meeting between him and a certain person connected to the new gen cases. Rather than anything work-related, it was merely to satiate a personal curiosity. He was not planning on talking about anything related to the New Gen investigations for the time being. And, due to his position, Bond could not simply meet with the person of his own, else he would risk drawing the ire of the detectives he was getting ahead of. Momose urged Bond over to a corner of the office. It was a fairly cramped space, almost all of which was already taken up by shelves packed full of files. The location was used as a reception area of sorts, and a pair of love seats had been wedged into the only place they could fit. Bond entered the section after Momose, and his eyes landed upon a lone girl sitting in one of the love seats. The girl was wearing a Sumai Academy uniform. Her head and shoulders are curved toward the ground, and she looked incredibly haggard.
ごめんね。お待たせしちゃって。
Or is it Yua? Oh shit, it is Yua! The girl looked up in startlement upon hearing Momose. In the process, her glasses had slipped down her nose a bit, leading her to swiftly readjust them with her finger.
あ、いえ、平気です。
Hey, it's been a while. How have you been? When she saw Bond, her expression turned slightly fearful before bowing her head and greeting a moment later. Bond felt somehow hurt by this. He had made every attempt to look as non-threatening as possible in both bearing and appearance. But the girl's reaction made him realize that despite his best efforts, the ferocity and intimidation particular to detectives was seeping out all the same. Looks like I've still got a lot more practicing to do, he thought with bitter amusement as he sat across from Yua.
楠ゆあさんだね。
はい。
亡くなったミヤさんの双子の姉。それで間違いないかな。
The older twin sister of the late Mia-san. Oh. She had a young... Oh. Oh. Shit. Yua slightly adjusted her posture, then returned a nod. The first New Gen incident, the group dive. Among the 5 high schoolers that had leapt to their deaths was a girl named Kusunoki Miya.
まあ、そんな緊張しなさんな。
Her own sister, good lord.
君を取り調べようなんて思っちゃねえんだ。雑談程度に思ってよ。本題に入る前に、ちょっと聞いていいかい？ゆあちゃんは妹さんが亡くなったことについてどう思う？
Fuck, just immediately jumping right in. Okay.
ちょっとバンちゃん。
あ、悪いね。職業病ってやつか。
Fucking hell, Bond. Have some tact.
気を使うような言い方できなくってな。
Bro.
ただ、気になってたんだ。捜査本部でも話題になってたんだが、楠木美也さんの遺族は奇妙だって。
The family was strange? How strange?
ばあちゃん。
いえ、いいんです。
Before Momose could rise to her feet over Bond's insensitive comment, Yua stopped her.
私もおかしいって思いますから。
Seriously, I am really loving Momose's character. Like she strikes me as... I'm not entirely sure Mama Bear fits like the proper wording, but she strikes me as like every kid is her kid and she is a super protective mom. Like, she'll treat every kid like they're her kid and be like super protective of them, I would say. That's the kind of vibe that I get from her. Basically a good person.
集団ライブで飛び降りた5人には自殺する理由なんてなかった。家族や友人はみんなそう主張している。だが、ミヤさんの家族だけは違った。
Your family was different, huh? Bond took his fan out from his belt and began cooling himself.
何も主張しなかった。 あっさり受け入れたって聞いてる。あまりに何も言わなさすぎて奇妙だったってな。
Ooh.
なんでだい？
お父さんもお母さんもミヤちゃんが死んでからおかしくなっちゃったんです。
Ah. The loss of a child caused them to mentally break. Anguish seeped from Yua's voice.
最初はミヤちゃんの事件の知らせを受けた日はそれでも泣いていたんです。お父さんもお母さんもとても辛そうでした。でも次の日の朝、なぜか二人は楽しそうに笑っていたんです。ミヤちゃんが死ぬ前と全く同じに戻ってたんです。
Oh, okay, that's different. So, okay. What if them snapping made them susceptible to sort of manipulation? Probably. That's... But then, why? Why specifically them? If this was a plan done by, you know, Genichi and those of the Nozomi group, then... Why would they fuck with Yua's family? Like, I don't know.
たった一日で
A single day.
私わけが分からなくて、二人はミヤちゃんのこと忘れようとしてるんじゃないかって思って、そうしたらお父さんが笑いながら、
What did he say?
お前に妹なんていないよって。
Oh! They were being messed with! They were made to think that her younger sister didn't exist. Oh, wait a minute. Mutual understanding. They snapped. Their minds broke, and in their anguish, they both reached a mutual understanding that they did not have another daughter. They only ever had Yua. Or maybe I'm connecting wrong pieces again, but that's... Oh!
ミヤちゃんが残した洋服とか靴とかを見せても全然取り合ってくれないんです。
They completely disregarded it.
それはお前のために予備で買ってあったものだって。そうやってお父さんたちはニュースからも警察の話からも目を背けて。
They ignored both the news and everything the police said. Oh my god.
記憶からミヤちゃんのことを消し去ろうとしてるんです。
Yeah, I'm starting to think that even if the news was playing it, so that's probably nothing to do with the Zonomi group, then they just both reached this mutual understanding, and because of that, she no longer existed.
つまり双子じゃなかったことに。
それで警察にもうちは一人っ子だって言って追い返してたわけか。
私とミヤちゃんは一卵性で見た目は瓜二つなんですけど。
Oh, they were identical twins. Okay.
あの子は妹は親から嫌われていました。
They didn't really like your sister? Why?
あの子はいつも自分の気持ちを押し殺して私のことを一番に考えてくれていたんです。
Sounds like you had yourself a very strong sister. Good God. As Yua spoke, memories from when Mia had still been alive resurfaced in her mind. First came a memory from when the two had still been in elementary school. One day, some relatives had brought the girls a single large teddy bear as a present. In contrast to the raw joy Yua displayed, Mia insisted that she did not like stuffed animals, and proceeded to not even so much as look the plush's way. Both her relatives and parents were upset with Mia for not acting as a child should. But despite Mia's protesting, Yua whispered to her that the two of them could share it, that it could be something they could both treasure. However, in response to her sister's kindness, Mia simply said that she did not want it and that Yua could have it. About a month later, when Yua had grown tired of the teddy bear, she woke up in the night and happened to witness a certain scene. With an incredibly joyful look on her face, Mia was hugging and talking to the bear plushie. That was the first time Yua had ever seen her sister so happy. And from this, she realized that her sister's insistence about disliking stuffed animals had been a lie, because she put her older sister's happiness above her own. Mia had been keeping her own feelings hidden, all for the sake of her older sister. The next day, Yua found a lovely drawing of a bear beneath Mia's pillow. Until her sister had grown tired of the teddy bear, Mia had been hugging and sleeping with the drawing in lieu of it. Things very similar to this happened again and again over all the 18 years they spent together. For their birthday celebrations, Yua always blew out the candles on the cake. But when Mia was prompted to do it, she would say, "I refuse to do something so ridiculous," angering her parents. Yua advanced to the private high school, Sume Academy. Mia, meanwhile, had been misbehaving at school, deliberately scoring low on exams, and therefore moved on to a public high school. Due to the exorbitant fees, their parents would have only been able to afford to send one of them to a private school. No matter how hard Yua tried to let her sister have something, Mia would always gain the upper hand and force Yua to be prioritized. To achieve this end, she even intentionally took a dislikable attitude.
私は結局ミヤちゃんの優しさに甘えて今まで自分だけいい思いをしてきました。ミヤちゃんがいなくなって初めてもっとあの子のために何かできることがあったはずだってすごく後悔して。私が代わりに知ってあげればよかった。しかも挙句に親に存在そのものを忘れられてしまうなんて。こんなのあんまりです。あんまりにも悲しいです。
Yua, having now reached her limit, could no longer squeeze out any more words. She took off her glasses, pressed her fingers against the corners of her eyes, and broke down in tears. Momose sat down beside her and gently rubbed her back.
それでユアちゃんは一人で事件のことを調べていたらしいの。ミヤちゃんに一体何があったのか知るためにね。
そりゃあ大変だったろう。
そして一人の人物を突き止めた。
She was able to identify a certain individual?
Huh?
As Momose held Yua's shoulders, she turned her eyes toward Bon.
西條匠くんよ。
Nishiji. Oh.
なるほどね。
Stroking the stubble on his chin, Bon leaned forward from the sofa.
いつだったか西条と追跡劇をしてたっていう女子高生の話を所轄のデカから聞いたんだが。
Oh, so he was informed about that chase that occurred.
もしかしてユアちゃんだったりする？
Yua nodded apologetically.
ああ、興味あるな。詳しく聞かせても。 おうと思ったけどちょっとごめんよ。
Oh boy, he's probably being called by Sua. He's probably like, why the hell did you leave me saddled with all this work, Bon? What the hell? With a strained smile, Bon lightly bowed his head to Yua and Mose. Christ, I just... Fuck those parents in particular, but Jesus. His words have been interrupted by the cell phone in his suit pocket. He swiftly took out the phone and checked the screen. Sua's name was displayed across it. I fucking called it.
もしもし、どうした？
先輩、7番目っす。
Oh no. The seventh? The victim?
なんだと？
Oh no, another victim. Sua's voice sounded strained. The sounds of investigators frantically scurrying about could be heard through the phone. Sua must have been at the investigation headquarters.
ニュージェネ第7の事件が起きたんすよ。
Damn it. Bond's eyes opened wide, and his expression turned bitter as his teeth sank into his lip. Sensing the seriousness of the situation from his behavior, Momose and Yua watched the detective with unease.
ガイシャは3人、友人同士らしいっす。
3 victims? Oh, wait a minute! The 3 people that freaking Kozapi beat up!
3人とも胴体から体が切断されてて。
Sliced in half with the torso? I thought they were the...
それぞれの上半身と下半身を別々に入れ替えて手ぐす、釣りとっすね。それで縫い付けられてたっす。
Holy shit!
それと額にそれぞれ Q、D、N って読める傷が。
What? No. QDN DQN. Oh no.
何かのメッセージか？
さあ、そこまでは。それと気になることが。
What?
司法解剖の結果分かったんですけど、
What did they find?
ガイシャの胴体の切断部はノコギリとか包丁とかそういう刃物で切断されたものじゃないって。
What? They weren't split by a saw knife or any other kind of sharp object? What? Oh wait, are you implying that they were pulled apart?
どういう意味だ？
なんか強い力で引きちぎられたそうっす。
I really shouldn't have eaten dinner before.
引きちぎられた。
Bond repeated Sua's words back to him with a low groan, then roughly scratched his head with the handle of his fan.
まるで怪獣だな。あるいは最近流行りの魔法使いとかな。
Oddly specific, but okay.
先輩、それマジでいいですか？映画オタクの自分でもさすがにその意見には同意しかねるっす。
なんなら例えだバカ。
You schmuck.
いいからさっさと捜査に戻れ。
After barking that order to Sua, Bond ended the call. Torn apart? Now that it was November, I had a feeling that the sun was already setting much earlier than before. By the time Rimi and I started heading home together after school, a faint orange was already staining the sky.
ごめんね。
Huh? Despite being silent up until now, Rimi abruptly apologized.
たく、いろいろ大変だったんでしょ。
It was the first time I'd gone home with Rimi in a while. I was genuinely, really happy that she'd come back. She'd even been the one to initiate it, saying, "Let's walk home together." Since we'd only gone home together no more than twice, I'd secretly been worried that it would never happen again. However, that turned out to not be the case.
一緒にいてあげられなくてごめん。 知り合いが例の地震で怪我しちゃって、
Oh.
ずっと面倒見てたから。
Even though I hadn't asked, Rimi was kind enough to explain herself to me. Though to be frank, almost all of Rimi's words are going in one ear and out the other. Yeah, you were too focused on what you saw from your sister. The bandage. The bandage I'd seen on Nanami's wrist at lunch break. It had been burned into my eyes and refused to go away.
もしかして怒ってる？
In the end, I had failed to say anything to Nanami. I'd been too scared. Even though Nanami was my little sister, even though I was Nanami's older brother, something had just felt unbelievably strange, and I had no idea what it was. The nurse had said that Nanami had no injuries. That hand that Shogun had delivered to my base had disappeared from the fridge without a trace. It all had to have been a delusion. But if that was true, why had Nanami's right wrist been wrapped in a bandage? Though it was possible that I was just overthinking it, and that she just gotten burned or stung by something, or got some other stupid minor injury that didn't matter at all. Yeah, that was probably it. That was the most logical answer. But even now, I was too scared to check. Even after failing to save her, I was still just pacing around, doing nothing, not even trying to talk to her. My very own sister. I really was the worst brother ever.
ねえ、タク。おい、もしもし。怒ってるならそう言ってよ。無視されるのって結構傷ついちゃうな。
え？
I looked over at Rimi, who seemed weirdly disheartened.
もしかして、私の話聞いてなかった？
After hesitating for a second, I nodded. And the moment I did, Rimi jabbed my cheek with her forefinger.
石、てっきり無視されたかと思ったよ。紛らわしいことしない。
That is fact. Communication is key. Ow! You just jabbed your nail into my cheek.
あ、大丈夫？
Rimi finally stopped poking me, and out came those words I had heard so often from her. Words of worry and concern. Words that I'd heard from Rimi again and again.
お昼ぐらいから顔色良くないよ。元気もないみたいだし。もしかして誰かにひどいこと言われた？
Everybody at school, but yeah.
だったら私に教えて。怒ってきてあげるから。
She was acting like an older sister, or a guardian even. Rimi was just a hopeless meddler. Well, that had been obvious from the moment she'd given an otaku freak like me the time of day. I was grateful to her for being worried about me. Before now, I'd either bottled up my worries deep inside or posted them anonymously on @channel. Should I tell her about what had happened with Nanami? But when I told her about the D-sword that one time, she didn't believe me at all. Then again, that would be the natural response from anyone sane. So if I were to tell her about Nanami, she'd probably either A, be speechless, or B, just laugh in my face. And if that was true, there really was no point in telling her. All I needed was for her to stay by my side. It would be better to bring the topic up with Kozupi or Senna instead. Sorry. Mere moments after stepping foot into my base, Rimi muttered that in exasperation. And yet, paradoxically, she seemed to be smiling happily as well. Weird.
変わってないな、この部屋の汚さがまさにタクって感じ。
If you're gonna be like that, then just clean it. Be my guest. With a sigh, I turned on my PC.
ちょっと帰ってくるなりパソコン？友達が来てるんだから少しはおもてなししてあげようっていう気持ちにはならないのかな。ねえ、お話ししようよ。
Oh. What to do here? Just talk with her? Let's see what happens. If it turns out bad, I'll cut it out. We'll see. After hitting me with such an unreasonable demand, Remy sat down on the sofa. If I tried to have a one-on-one conversation with a 3D girl, it would be over in seconds. As much as I'd gotten used to talking with Remy, since I'd had a lot more chances to do so recently, I still doubted I'd even last 5 minutes. Moreover, my head was already fully occupied with the stuff about Nanami, so I very much didn't feel up for a casual conversation. And so I resorted to just ignoring her. I sat down in my chair, all while remaining painfully aware of my own worthlessness. Well, too bad. We're gonna force you to talk. Maybe. I sensed Remy moving behind me. The rustling of her clothes was growing closer.
だから無視しないでよ。
Wow. Before I had the chance to turn around, I was embraced from behind. A gentle floral scent hit me. My back was struck by the soft scent. Really?
寂しいよ。そういうことされると。
I must have been running away from reality again. Apparently, for the record, that was because I accidentally hit something. So I'm going to apologize for that. I must have been running away from reality again, giving myself a delusion that was a lot easier to swallow than the real world. Upon thinking that, the sheer emptiness I felt overpowered any lust I may have had, and I was no longer able to enjoy the delusion anymore. Rather than taking her and pinning her down on the bed, I decided to throw out all the things I could have only voiced in a delusion such as this.
僕だって寂しかった。辛かったんだ。リミがこの1週間全然連絡くれなくて。
I could feel the movements of Remy's body directly against my back. Her chest faintly rose and fell with her every breath. As obvious as the fact may have been, it reminded me that Remy truly was alive.
ごめん。一緒にいてあげられなくてごめん。
Remy tightened her embrace around me.
私の中でもまだ迷いがあって、どうしたらいいかわからなくて、ちょっと考えてみようと思って。
Doubts? Like what? What could she have been talking about?
そもそも私、タクと一緒にいていいのかなとか、このままの関係を続けるべきなのかなとか。
Now this might just be a real delusion here.
でもね、このままじゃきっとダメなんだ。それじゃ何も救えない。
I won't be able to save anything?
ねえタク、私が最初に願ったのはさ、一つだけだった。
And?
なのにどうして人は、私は際限なく望み続けちゃうんだろうね。あの空を見つけた時に私は
I had no idea what Rimi was talking about, nor did I know how to respond to it. Silence enveloped us. I could hear Rimi's gentle breaths close to my ear, but no matter how long I waited for her to end it with some silly punchline, none ever came in the wafting silence. Was it possible that this wasn't a delusion? The moment I considered that, a wave of anxiety ran through me. In reality, Rimi was hugging me. She was pressing tightly against me. That realization alone nearly destroyed any sense of reason I had. I had a feeling that in a situation like this, if I pinned Rimi to the bed, she'd let me have my way with it. Don't! With a gulp, I... Oh, thank God.
今の何？
Oh, thank God. For once, Seiro actually saved us. Rimi let go of me in surprise, and the tender sensation vanished along with her. A complicated mix of both relief and disappointment spread throughout my chest. Mostly relief for me, good God. Oh, wait a second. Rimi just heard my Seroton notification tone. Oh God, how embarrassing. When I opened my email software, I saw about 3 messages from Grim telling me to join the chat room. Now that I thought about it, I hadn't really chatted much with Grim recently. We used to talk online pretty much every day. But since I'd been refraining from playing ESO, it had been around 10 days since we'd last talked. Oop. Hey, Nightar-kun! I've been waiting for you, because there's been another new gen! What the fuck? A picture drawn on an online forum using only the characters and symbols included in the ASC2 character set, also known as text-based art. Okay. What are you even on about? Oh, now the tip pops up. New gen, dude! What the fuck do you think I'm on about? How exactly do we go from new gen to nude gen? New generation, new gen, new gen, new gen. Come on, that shit's obvious. Use common sense, for fuck's sake. More importantly, there's a 7th case.
どうしたの？
Likely having noticed my gasp, Rimi stood up and walked over to me. She peeked over my shoulder at the monitor.
第7の事件。
It had happened again. Another new gen. How long was this damn thing gonna go on for? Was I the next? Would I be the victim of the 8th case? The 9th?
タク、気にすることないよ。何も怖いことなんてない。タクは狙われたりなんかしない。全部タクの被害妄想。ね。
Okay, this is her trying her best to kind of keep us calm. Because she knows we're about to go on a mental spiral. That was completely baseless encouragement. You can't calm me down with such weak sauce shit, Rimi. Anxiety aside, Grim was pretty much the new gen news guy at this point. He'd been keeping me in the loop about basically everything. Even now, he was going out of his way to link a bunch of blog posts and news articles about it. Seemed like he really wanted me to take a look. Biting my lip, I reluctantly clicked the first link. The DQN Oh, fuck!
On November 4th at approximately 4:50 a.m., the dead bodies of 3 men were discovered hanging from an iron pole near a railroad in Shibuya, Tokyo. The deceased have been identified as 19-year-old Fujita Kohei, unemployed, 20-year-old Anzawa Saburo, a college student, and 19-year-old Takagi Ryo, a construction worker. According to the police, the bodies were severed in half at the waist, but the wounds do not indicate the use of any sharp weaponry. Furthermore, the bottom halves of each of the bodies were interchanged with one another. Something new combinations which were tightly sewn back together with thread, or sewing. Carved into each body were the letters D, Q, and N, respectively. The police are investigating the visibility that ability that's maybe a message left behind by the culprit. Possibility. On the popular anonymous online message board @channel, images of the incident were leaked prior to the official coverage of the events. It has already been accepted as the 7th case of the New Generation Madness, aka New Gen, and it is christened the DQN Puzzle, due to the manner in which the top and bottom halves of the corpses were recombined. Notably on @channel, the term DQN means an individual lacking basic common sense. Regarding the serial New Gen cases, the mourning families of the victims have been taking legal action against some particularly offensive posts on @channel, a move which has sparked fierce debate online. Posted 3:27 p.m. Zako.
New gen for the win! Wait, it says DQN? LMAO, literally zero connection to the other cases. Police are dumb as fuck. You trying to say it's one of us anti-DQNs? With her lower body swapped around, she has like a puzzle, but with corpses. If only I could trade in my upper body for some alphas, LMAO. Boy, boy Nishijo will sniff out the pup for us any time now, LOL. New Gen's bearer. Group died, man-child, crucifixion, vampire, numbskull, finger food, DQ and puzzle. Number unknown. To be continued.
今日午前4時50分頃、東京都渋谷区の線路沿いで男性3人の他殺死体が鉄柱に吊り下げられているのを通りかかった新聞販売員の男性が発見しました。
Yeah, that's a little fucked up.
警察の調べによりますと、殺されたのはいずれも渋谷区に住む無職藤田康平さん、大学生の安沢三郎さん、とび職の高木亮さんの3人です。3人とも胴体の部分が切断され、それぞれの上半身と下半身が別々に入れ替えられて糸で縫合されていました。
Okay, maybe they weren't the 3 people that Kozupi beat the shit out of.
3人の額にはそれぞれ謎の傷がつけられており、警察では犯人からのメッセージではないかとみて調べています。渋谷では2ヶ月ほど前から猟奇殺人事件が頻発しており、警察では今回の事件も同一犯による犯行の可能性が高いとみて捜査を続けています。
At the end of the news clip, photographs of the 3 victims were shown. I had seen those faces before.
あいつらだ。
The 3 people that beat you up.
知ってるの？
昨日僕に絡んできた。
I'd given them my wallet, but they'd kicked my ass anyway. I'd then fallen unconscious, and when I woke up, Kozupi was beside me. The 3 of them had been collapsed on the ground, covered in blood. I dug my wallet out from my pocket and stared at it intently. When I came to, Kozupi had been carrying it, and she'd given it back to me soon after. Could the person who'd killed those 3 be... No, definitely not. The last time I'd seen them, they'd been beaten to a pulp and covered in blood, but they hadn't been cut in half or anything. Which would mean they'd been killed after Kozupi and I had left. It had to have been Shogun. That wrinkly old asshole was trying to provoke me! Damn it! He really was committed to driving me insane. Just how far was he willing to go? I wanted to vomit. I clutched my stomach as it churned in pain. Was I next? Would I be next to die?
終了。
A hand reached out from behind me and pushed the power button on the monitor. The screen went pitch black.
落ち着いて。
She's trying her best to calm us down.
気にすることないよ。ただの偶然だって、きっと。
That or she's trying to prevent us from getting a D-sword. I just thought about that. You need to mentally break to acquire a D-sword. What if she's trying to prevent that? Just thought about that. Why was Rimi acting so ridiculously optimistic? This couldn't possibly be just a series of coincidences. It's a series of unfortunate events. Not written by Lemony Snicket.
それより、お腹空いちゃった。ねえ、私が行きつけのお店があるんだけど、そこにご飯食べに行かない？
Huh?
安くて美味しいんだよ。私が保証する。まあ、お客さんはおじさんが多いから、私みたいのが一人で行くのはちょっと恥ずかしいけどね。あ、それと、駅の中に入らなくちゃいけないんだった。渋谷駅のコーナーにあるから。ちなみに、山手線内回りと外回りのホーム、どっちにもあるんだけど、私は断然内回りの方が好き。
You know, now that there's this level of suspicion that I've got against Rimi right now, like, maybe that's the case. Maybe she's literally trying to prevent us from snapping and keep us from acquiring a D-sword. Because the other option is she's legitimately just trying to be a really good friend. Food, huh? I really didn't have much of an appetite right now. It felt like Shogun was holding a knife straight to my throat. Like he was saying, I can kill you whenever I please. Please, just let me go. What had I done to deserve this? I couldn't take it anymore. Oh shit. Kishimoto Ayase was lying in a hospital bed, idly gazing out the window. No bars lined the outside of it, a fact which set it apart from those at Arkheart Medical, where Ayase had stayed in the past. All that stood past the window's frame was the landscape of Shinjuku, decorated by skyscrapers and illuminated by the sunset. Flocks of pigeons soared freely through the sky, flapping their wings to their heart's content. Every now and then she would gaze upon this sight with a pained expression. Her slightly tired eyes were empty and bleak. Her irises reflected nothing. Her lips, which could let flow a voice so beautiful, it shook the youth of Shibuya, were now sealed tight. Not even so much as a hum escaped from them. Following her suicide attempt, an event which caused quite the turmoil, she had been admitted to the psychiatric ward of a large hospital in Yoyogi. Her injuries were already very nearly healed. According to the doctors, it had been nothing short of a miracle that she had been able to survive a fall from that height, let alone with barely even a scratch. However, she had indeed hit her head fairly hard, and as such, she had been rushed to the hospital, primarily so they could see how the situation would develop. It had already been over a week since then. However, despite her having been admitted for such a reason, all it seemed to entail was a few rudimentary tests taken every couple of days or so. Beyond that, she had been rather neglected. Her hospital room was private, with no other beds inside it. Ever since her stay had begun, her D-sword had been leaning against the window. It constantly emitted a blue light, yet nobody who visited her ever seemed to notice. Not that there had been many visitors to begin with. Phantasm fans would attempt to force their way into her room daily, but as they always caused a disturbance in the process, the hospital had an excuse to forbid them from visiting her. And since Ayase was somewhat detached from her family, there were almost no others who came to visit her. Jesus. Her fellow band members had made an appearance once, but Ayase used that opportunity to announce her decision for the band to break up. They had not contacted her again since.
Kishimoto-san, 体温計ピピってなりました?
Hello. A nurse wearing white scrubs opened the door to the room, then swiftly entered. Ayase slowly turned to look at the nurse's face and took out the thermometer that had been resting under her arm. It was as if she had only just remembered its presence. The nurse took a look at the recorded temperature shown on its digital screen, then took a note of it on the clipboard she had brought with her.
37度1分と。
Me being a filthy American with Fahrenheit.
ちょっと熱っぽいかしら。ズキズキするわ、頭。
Ayase grimaced in pain once again.
あら、また頭痛？
I mean, she fell from a great height. Pretty sure she has a little bit more of a headache than what you could think. Just,
でもそれは薬の副作用よ。気にしなくてもそのうち良くなりますよ。
Having recorded her temperature, the nurse consoled Ayase with a kind smile. Her expression was so gentle it was clear to all how she was able to put up her patients at ease. And yet, despite the nurse's attempts, Ayase simply pushed her hand against her forehead as she shook it back and forth. Ayase had been plagued by mild headaches ever since she had first been hospitalized. They were not especially painful, but they still left her with an uncomfortable feeling that refused to go away, one that felt as if her brain itself was convulsing. It had even reached the point where her ability to think was impaired. As well as this, her body would feel heavy as lead. Ayase had experienced such symptoms in the past, namely when she had been institutionalized at Heart Medical. Heart, Noah's Ark. Oh! Back then, her head had constantly been split apart by painful headaches. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It deprived her of all sleep and emotional stability. Well, I think we figured out what mentally broke her. These consistent headaches. Those are the memories she did not want to resurface. The past she had sealed away. The events of around 2 years ago. And yet her headache was causing them to flash back into her mind once more. Oh, fuck. Oh, I hate this. Oh, God, I fucking hate this. In them, a dark room, its single window locked behind bars. Apart from the wall in which that window stood, the rest of the walls were covered with mirrors. Ayase had been placed in the center of the room, sat in a crude steel chair. She was wearing headgear with countless cables protruding from it. Her hands were tied to the back of the chair. Her head was locked in place with her chin tilted slightly upward. Not another soul was present in the room. Thus, all that could be heard were the sounds of Ayase's labored breathing and the metal groans of the chair she sat upon. Saliva trickled down the corners of her mouth, accompanied by moans akin to those of a beast's. If anyone were to hear them, they would never have been able to guess that they would be coming from a girl as young as her. She was being tortured. Slow, methodical torture. One that made very, very little sound. The method only involved one single thing, not even an action. A drop of water falling from above onto her forehead every 5 seconds on the exact same spot. She's being waterboarded. It's a way of water. Oh, fucking Christ. That was all it took. And it would continue unrelentingly for 2 full days. The result? Ayase could think of only the drop that would fall next. Her senses were sharpened to their limits. And each time a drop fell onto her forehead, another hallucination would be born. One in which each and every nerve across her body was plucked out one by one. One in which the bones of her entire skeleton crumbled to dust. One in which her head was pierced by a long, sharp awl. One in which all liquids within her body, including her blood, froze to ice. One in which the skin lining her entire body slowly rotted away before eventually peeling off. Assailed without and by these sensations, Ayase could no longer maintain her sanity. Returning to her senses, she breathed erratically as she tightly gripped the sheets lining the bed. Her body trembled as those dark memories of hers resurfaced in her mind. The nurse that had been in her room just a moment ago was already gone. Dinner time had just arrived at the hospital, and the clamorous sounds that came from it resounded from down the hall. Ayase tried to recall the words the nurse had spoken to her right before leaving. Was her headache really just a side effect of the drug she was on? Or had it been caused by her hitting her head, perhaps? Or perhaps it was just a hallucination brought forth by her past memories. She was unable to come to a decisive conclusion. Wiping away the sweat that ran down her forehead, Ayase called forth a smile laced with self-loathing.
構わないわ。今さら何をされたって。
Oh, it certainly still matters. I want to know the person who put you through that, and I would like to put them through the same torture, except leave it going for like a month.
あれはあの神罰を耐え抜いたんだから。
Divine punishment?
迷わない。私は。
Murmuring in perhaps delirium, Ayase soon became aware of a sound reverberating throughout the hall. The comforting sound of shoes stepping on the linoleum floor. It was certainly not being made by a nurse, and the sound of the footsteps was heading right for the room she was in. Someone knocked on her door and she sealed her lips tight.
失礼します。
It's Suwa. Then that someone was but a single man. He had come bringing gifts, namely, a large basket filled with all manners of fruits.
Oh, for the love, what do you want?
She could recognize the man, which was far from a good sign. Thus, she stared at him with a dubious glare.
どうも。あ、別に怪しいもんじゃないっすよ。自分は。
知ってるわ。
The man was a detective of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. He had once shadowed Ayase, as she was originally a suspect for the New Gen case. The detective, relieved by her response, scratched his head. His demeanor was unendingly casual.
いやー、嬉しいっす。君みたいな美人に覚えててもらえて。
They will never find your body.
記憶力いいんすね。
The detective moved closer to her bed. Ayase briefly glanced at her D-sword leaning against the window. It lay just outside her reach.
今日はお見舞いに来たんすよ。
そうは思えないわ。
You shouldn't.
目的は
鋭いっすね。
The detective flinched very overtly, his reaction perhaps bordering on theatrical.
まあ、ちょっと綾瀬ちゃんに聞きたいことがあって。
Right.
あ、これ、よかったら食べてほしいっす。
The detective smiled innocently, presenting the basket he had brought with him, then placed it at Ayase's feet without waiting for approval.
うまいっすよ。あと、高かった。と。
Oh my god.
いらない。
Fuck you.
まあ、そう言わず、せっかく買ってきたんで。
Let a guy that's been shadowing me show me hospitality? Go to hell.
後でお母さんが来た時にでも切ってもらって。しまった。綾瀬ちゃんはもう何年も両親に会ってないんだったっすね。
Holy shit, you do not have any tact, my dude. Despite the detective's insensitive remark, Ayase felt nothing in response to it. Her ties to her parents had been cut from a very young age. Her parents had a reputation to uphold, so a child that often caused problems like Ayase had been inconvenient to them, to say the least. What is up with these horrible parents?
Christ! Her only remaining contact with them was the wire transfer she received for her living expenses each month, though it could hardly be called that.
申し訳ないっす。
So wait a minute, they barely even pay her from that? Did I read that right? The detective apologized, bowing down hastily. Ayase had only just gotten over the shock caused by her flashback, so she was in no mood to speak with him. Nonetheless, she urged herself to talk all the same.
聞きたいことって何？アリバイ？
違うっすよ。それは前に散々聞いたし。もう綾瀬ちゃんの容疑は晴れたっす。君は白、真っ白。
Huh.
目星はついたの？犯人の。
それは教えられないんすよ。捜査上の秘密っす。
匠。
秘密っす。
The detective smirked. He was attempting to laugh the question away. And yet, somehow unrefined could be seen through the cracks of that smile. Something.
しかし西条くんは不思議な少年っすね。
Understatement. But I don't think he's a killer. Unless he really does have a split personality, or a dissociative identity disorder. I really shouldn't be comparing the two. I don't know.
彼を見ていると殺人の容疑者にはとても見えない。もしあれで本当に犯人だったとしたら、まさに人の皮をかぶった悪魔っす。
まだ容疑者なのね、彼。
Well, I mean, I had a feeling they were going to keep considering him a suspect until they get told otherwise.
いや、そういうわけじゃないっすよ。
What? The detective casually denied it with a smile, putting Ayase's persistent questions to rest.
ああ、今の話、誰にも言っちゃダメっすからね。情報漏洩すると上司に怒られるんすよ。まあ当然なんすけど。
There's a character I want to compare you to, but I feel like that would be a major spoiler for a game that I want people to experience blind, so I will not say who you are reminding me of.
この前も先輩のとばっちりで怒られたばっかで。綾瀬ちゃんも一度会ってると思うんすけど、覚えてるかな。バンさんっていう髪がボサボサで武将髭生やしたおっさんでか。
That's one way to describe him. Ayase did remember him. When she had been questioned, that older detective had been even more talkative than the younger one she was conversing with now. His way of speaking had been a lot more assertive as well.
あの人がすぐこのバカってどうなるんすよ。そのくせ自分は本来の捜査をせずに、なんだかわけのわからないことばっか調べてて、挙句の果てに自分まで無理やり付き合わされて、最近胃が痛いんすよね。
Careful you say that.
いや、まあ根はいい人っすし、勘が異常に鋭い人で、過去にも難事件をいくつか解決に導いたらしいんすけどね。
その話をするためここに来たの。
Ayase interrupted the man, and his smile quickly soured.
ああ、いや、申し訳ないっす。つい愚痴入っちゃったっすね。
Then what is it you want to talk about?
今の話は全面的に内緒にしてほしいっす。諏訪守る、一生のお願いっすよ。
You're really weird.
それで
一つ目は、なんであんなことを？
Oof. Really? Despite his ambiguous phrasing, Ayase could tell that he was referring to her diving off the school rooftop.
もう何度も話したわ、他の刑事さんに。
邪神王グラジオールの復活を阻止するためですか？
To avert the resurrection of the wicked-hearted king Gladiol.
死ぬつもりなんてなかった。魂を 一つ上のステージに持っていこうとしただけよ。
例の若者の間で話題になった君の歌についても似たようなことを言ってたっすよね。
And that was the second question he had for her. Ayase let out a faint sigh.
ニュージェネのことを歌ったものなんかじゃないわ、あの詩は。グラジオール記目視録詩編のインスピレーションを受けて作った第3章102節よ。
The Gladial Book of Psalms and Revelation? Chapter 3, verse 102. Fictional. A high fantasy novel based on the Eastern European myth of Gladiol, the wicked-hearted king. With the saga in its entirety being told over the course of 23 volumes, it depicts the battle between the seven Black Knights and Gladiol. It was written by R.C.O. Ziegler from 1929 to 1951. The series has been translated into several languages, but it never gained widespread appeal due to its rather esoteric writing style. Ziegler's other works related to the Gladiol mythos include the Gladiol Book of Kings and Wicked Hearts, Apostolic Letter, and more. All of these works are collectively referred to as the Gladiol Saga. I almost thought that was a real thing. I was about to look that chapter 3 verse thing up. I was about to look that up. Thank God I didn't.
邪神をグラジオールが現れようとしている。復活を阻止するにはグラジオールが流した黒い血によって作られた7つの杭が必要。
Wait, 7 stakes? Would the seven stakes of purgatory help?
杭は剣へと形を変え、神罰を乗り越えた7人の黒騎士の手に渡る。目には目を、歯には歯を。邪神を背負いし人間だけが邪神王を滅ぼせるのよ。
なんか映画みたいっすね。そういう壮大な設定は好きっす。
Ayase glared at the detective in response to his comment.
設定じゃないわ。現実よ。
じゃあ最後の質問っす。
Yeah? The detective casually brushed away Ayase's objection, though she was all too used to this form of dismissal by now. Not a single person she told this story to thus far had believed it.
君や西条くんの他にも水明の生徒について何人か洗ったんすけどね。
The detective mumbled to himself as he folded his arms. This was very obviously another act of theatrics, and Ayase had no intention of commenting on it.
何？
すごくバカバカしい質問なんすけど。
As opposed to all the other shit that I've been reading, I sincerely doubt whatever you're about to say is going to be that fucking crazy.
刑事が質問するようなことじゃないんすよね、本当は。子供じみてるっていうか。
そう。質問する気がないなら出て行って。頭が痛いの。
Poor girl's got a bit of a headache. Either speed it up or take care of it. Or just leave.
ああ、いや、実はね、バンさんが妙なことを言い出してるんですよ。君たちは魔法使いなんじゃないかって。
Oh boy. Upon hearing that the subject of that remark was plural, Ayase raised her eyebrows in suspicion.
違いますよね。
使えるわ。
Okay. As she replied, Ayase's line of sight was directed not toward the man, but toward her hand that lay atop her bed sheets.
綾瀬ちゃんって面白い子っすね。
でもニュージェネはグラジオールの騎士と無関係。
New Gen is wholly unrelated to the Knights of Gladiol.
ああ、そうっすか。まあどうでもいいんすけどね。
The detective, completely disinterested in what Ayase had just said, brushed off her words once again, then began to stretch. Holy shit, that music. That's your ringtone? The moment he did so, a digital sound suddenly cut through the silence of the room. The detective, surprised by this interruption, reached into the pocket of his suit and took out his cell phone.
まずった。病院って携帯禁止なんですよね。電源オフにしておくの忘れてた。うわ、しかも女からだし。
A certain girl?
付き合って4年になるラブラブの彼女がいるんすよ。
Huh? He turned his phone off with a grin, forcing the caller to hang up. He then turned to Ayase once more.
綾瀬ちゃんは映画見るっすか？
What?
スパークウォーズって知らない？それに出てくるダース・スパイダー伯爵のテーマなんす。今のメロディー。
Oh my god, Darth Spider? I also had no interest in movies or nor anything of the sort. Having long since decided that she had no obligation to further entertain the detective's questioning, she returned to gazing silently outside the window. I'm suspecting you all of a sudden now, Suwa!
実は自分スパークウォーズオタクなんすよ。
Stop it.
あ、興味ないっすか？そりゃ失礼したっす。じゃ、自分はこれで。
With that, the detective concluded the conversation with which he had no partner, then left the hospital room. Ayase did not even turn around to watch him go. With the man gone, all that reflected in her eyes was the twilight sky slowly turning indigo.
このボケナス、ずっと待ってたんだからね。
What the flying fuck? I was about to stop the episode. Where the hell is this coming from?
あなたのことなんか大嫌い。でも大好き。
Oh, thank God that's over with. Alright, there was no way I was gonna start an episode with that annoying ass sound. Okay. Rimi's back. A slight sense of normalcy, well, for as long as it lasted, for about 5 seconds, has returned. Misumi is being Misumi, but only now he's suddenly actually starting to talk with the group with, Takumi again, only because Rimi showed up. And a new victim has popped up, and it turned out to be those 3 people that beat the shit out of Takumi. And now they're being called the DQN case. And Shogun at this point is literally just doing everything in his power to completely break Takumi. And now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably a bad thing. That is probably a really horrifically bad thing for him to suddenly break. And potentially getting a D-sword. That seems like it's potentially one of the worst outcomes. That is what it feels like. Ah, fuck. I don't know. What I do know, though, is I'm done. That's it. I'm taking a break. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time, because at this point, I'm just... Christ almighty.